Proverbs chapter 15, verse 16. Better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. So fear of the Lord. Job chapter 28, verse 28. And unto man he said, Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. Psalm 19, verse 9. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 3. He that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. So there it calls for people that are ruling over men to have fear of God. And remember, before that we saw the fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. And before that, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. Genesis chapter 20, verse 11. I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place. That was Abraham saying that. Romans chapter 3, verse 18. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 10. Gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live upon the earth. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 13. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, and serve him. I'm going to get up here. From where I'm reading, they don't have... Some of these books sometimes cut out and they don't have the whole verse. So I have to get it up here. I'll take 1 second. I think I know the rest of it, but I want to just make sure I get it right. And then you can see it here. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So there you have that. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25. So here's an example. The fear of man bringeth a snare. So we're not supposed to fear man. And then this book has Luke chapter 21, verse 25 through 28. It doesn't have all of it, but talks about men's hearts failing them for fear. And this book says a true believer does not fear future judgment. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 27. But a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. Then it has Job 15, verse 24. Trouble and anguish shall make him afraid. I'm not sure if it has the rest of that one. Let's see. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Casting all your care upon him. It doesn't have the whole verse. Trying to think. Okay, so 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, So honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Psalm 22 verse 23 talks about fear of the Lord. Praise him, glorify him, fear him. 2 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 1. Let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, and that's lowercase s, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Now you might think, I want more fear of the God. Well, you can pray for it. Psalm 86 verse 11, teach me thy way, O Lord. I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. And this book says, see Proverbs chapter 15, Proverbs 15 verse 16, and Proverbs 19 verse 23. So this book has the fear of the Lord. It has Proverbs chapter 8 verse 13. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Psalm 111 verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 15 verse 16. Better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. Isaiah chapter 33 verse 6. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. And I want to just repeat Proverbs 15:16. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord. So better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. Proverbs 14 verse 27. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. Psalm 19 verse 9. The fear of the Lord is clean. Hebrews 12 verse 28, let us have grace whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. Revelation chapter 15 verse 4, who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name, for thou only art holy. And then it has Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12 through 17, part of it, with Israel and with the fear of the Lord thy God. I'm also going to, since it doesn't have the whole one, I'm going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 24. Only fear the Lord, and serve him in truth with all your heart. For consider how great he hath done. For consider how great things he hath done. Psalm 130, verse 4. But there is forgiveness with thee, that thou mayest be feared. Revelation chapter 14, verse 7. Saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. Let's see. I got some more here. I was just seeing if it was recording. So it is recording. Psalm 5:7. In thy fear will I worship. Again, in thy fear will I worship. And again, you can pray for more fear of the Lord. So the book has, in thy fear will I worship. So the connection with worship. Also, with service. Psalm 2, verse 11. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. And then it has, to keep us from sin. The book has Exodus chapter 20 verse 20. Fear not, for Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. So fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. Then this book that I'm reading has for good government, 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 3, he that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And then it has for administration of justice. It lists 2 Chronicles chapter 19, verse 6 through 9, but it doesn't give it. And then for perfecting holiness in our Christian lives, 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 1 it has, but it doesn't have the verse. And then it talks about, it has Psalm 147, verse 11. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, in those that hope in his mercy. In those that, hope in his mercy. The Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, and those that hope in his mercy. Psalm 103, verse 13, like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. Acts chapter 10, verse 35, but in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. Psalm 103, verse 17, but the mercy of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him. So it talks about mercy for those that fear them, accepted with him. We had Acts chapter 10, verse 35, but in every nation that he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. And then before that we had pity, Psalm 103, verse 13, like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. And before that we had pleasure to the Lord. In Psalm 147, verse 11, the Lord taketh pleasure in them that fear him, in those that hope in his mercy. So continuing on, blessings, Psalm 112, verse 1, blessed is the man that feareth the Lord. So there we have blessings, confidence. Proverbs 14, verse 26, in the fear of the Lord is strong confidence. Then this book has separation from evil. Proverbs 16, verse 6, by the fear of the Lord men depart from evil. Christian fellowship, Malachi chapter 3, verse 16, then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. So those that feared, then they that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. So one more time. They that feared the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 12, verse 13. The book doesn't have the whole verses, but it says, neither fear their fear, nor be afraid. So again, you're not supposed to have fear of man. You're not supposed to have the same fear that non-Christians have. Fear of the Lord brings answered prayer. Psalm 105, verse 19, he will fulfill the desire of them that fear him. He will hear their cry and will save them. And then brings long life, fear of the Lord. Proverbs 10, verse 27, the fear of the Lord prolongeth days. So to review some of it, remember to worship. In thy fear will I worship. Serving, we had serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Keeps us from sin. Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. Good government, with 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 3. He that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And then just to summarize the other ones, bringing pleasure to the Lord, causes the Lord to pity upon the child of God, brings acceptance, mercy, brings mercy of God, brings blessings, confidence, separation from evil, Christian fellowship, supersedes the fear of man. It brings answered prayer. It brings long life. Remember, it's wisdom, the fear of the Lord, hatred of evil. It's a fountain of life. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is clean. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. Let us have grace whereby we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. Remember, the fear of God is commanded. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. And Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 4, ye shall walk after the Lord your God, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him, and cleave unto him. And remember Proverbs 29, verse 25, the fear of man bringeth a snare. So you're not supposed to fear man, fear God. And lastly, again, you can pray for more fear of the Lord. Psalm 86, verse 11, teach me thy way, O Lord, I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. And this book also has see Proverbs chapter 15, or see Proverbs 15, verse 16, Proverbs 19 and verse 23. So this has been a teaching from the King James Bible on fear of the Lord. Hopefully you can see how important it is.